This webinar, as I'm sure you're aware, is to introduce Ripple Effects thematic funds. So you're going to be hearing about each of the three key areas of our strategy from the people who know them best, because they're the ones who lead those areas of our work in country. And then you'll also be going to hear about a new way to support these areas of our work. And those of you who've been involved in our work for a while will probably be aware that we have a strategy which runs until 2030. And it's a 10-year strategy. So it started in 2020 and we've just gone past the midpoint. And the overall objective of that strategy is to reach 5 million more farmers by 2030. And underneath that overarching goal sit the three core pillars of our strategy. And those are sustainable agriculture, gender and social inclusion, and enterprise and innovation. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about those areas of work now, because that's what my colleagues will be doing shortly. But the thing that I do want to say right from the beginning is that these three areas of our work are very integrated and work alongside each other, as those of you who've been to visit the work will know. So as an example, the work that we do on gender and social inclusion is designed to really maximise the impact of our sustainable agriculture work on the most marginalised people and to make sure that they benefit from the work they do. And as another example, our work on enterprise and innovation is designed to take the sustainable agriculture work to the next step. So when somebody's food secure, we want to help them scale up and access markets. So the three very much work alongside each other. And if you've supported Ripple Effects work at all in the past, you will have supported our work towards these three areas, because this is really at the core of what we do. The thing that's new, so the new initiative that we launched in January, is that we're now giving our supporters the opportunity to direct their support to one of these three areas if there's an area that they feel particularly passionate about. And the reason why we wanted to do this, there were a few reasons. One of them is that we really want our supporters to understand the impact that their support is having on our strategy and helping us get closer to our goals. And so the funds are really designed to do that. We're going to be sharing a lot more information about progress towards each of these three key areas and how your support is helping unlock that progress. We also want to raise our profile as an expert in all three areas. And the thing that I hear from our supporters often is that they know quite a lot about the sustainable agriculture pillar of our work, but perhaps less about gender and social inclusion and enterprise and innovation. But actually, all three areas are equally weighted in our strategy and they complement each other. So we really want to raise the profile of all three and make sure that we're clear about what the impact of all three areas is. And we want to simplify our messaging and draw attention to what we do best. So we know there are other organisations in East Africa working on sustainable agriculture, on gender and on innovation, but we are really proud of our model. We're confident in it and in the way that these areas of work together and in our unique approach. So we really want to really draw attention to that and to make sure that we're highlighting what's unique about Ripple Effects model. So we decided last year that we wanted to launch these funds, and we went away as a global team and we thought about how do we present them and position them in a way that it is exciting, hopefully, to our supporters and to us, but also really explains what we do very clearly. And this is what we've come up with. So we have the Farming for the Future Fund, and this one supports the sustainable farming pillar of our work. And that work is led by Meshach Sakuku, who you're going to hear from in a minute. So that's Farming for the Future. We have the Equal Roots Fund, which is the one that covers all of our work on gender and social inclusion. And that work is led by Sofonit Mesfin, based in Ethiopia, who you'll also be hearing from. And finally, we have our Seed and Scale Fund, which is where our work on enterprise and innovation sits. And this work is led by my colleague Deo in Uganda, and he's going to be telling you more about that work in a minute. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how all of this translates into funding, so our target is to raise £3 million for these funds by 2030. And you can see in the table on the right what our target is for each fund and also how much has been secured. So you can see from that we do already have £1 million secured against the Farming for the Future Fund, which is why the target for that fund is slightly higher, because we're trying to set achievable but also quite ambitious goals for these funds. In terms of how that money's broken down, 40% of donations to the funds cover core costs which make all of our work under that pillar possible. So the core costs linked to that specific area. 50% of donations to the fund are completely unrestricted. Oh, I have an echo. Could everyone just make sure they're muted? Thank you. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, unrestricted funding, which can be used across the organisation where it's needed the most, is really valuable. And that just makes sure that we can really invest in each of these three areas. And then finally, 10% of the funding is for innovation. And the thematic coordinators that you're about to hear from have some really interesting ideas about how we make sure that we're really at the cutting edge in each of our three key areas. And that's what that 10% is being used for. So I realise that's quite a lot of information. At the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing a little bit of detail about how you can get involved in supporting the funds if you'd like to. But for now, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Winnie Mailu, who is our head of thematic support based in Kenya, and she leads all of our programming. So she's going to give you an overview of how that's structured. So over to you, Winnie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, great to invite all of you to this webinar today, and really feeling honored to get the opportunity to talk about what we do here at Triple Effect. Emma has introduced the fund, so I will just crack onto the challenges that Triple Effect is trying to address. I have, first and foremost, I think I have introduced my name, Winnie Mailu. I'm the head of thematic support and capacity building, and I coordinate all our three programmatic areas of work, which, as Emma said, you're going to hear more about shortly. So in terms of the challenges we're addressing, a smallholder farmer in Africa is what I would call a paradox, because they produce most of the food that is actually consumed in Africa. 80% of the food that's consumed comes from smallholder farmers, yet they are mostly the poorest. And that's where the paradox comes in. And why is this? It's because they have to face lots of compounded challenges, some of which are climate related. We have climate change that has affected the manner in which farmers are able to predict when to plant, when to harvest, and that has had dire consequences onto the yields that they anticipate. So climate change is really a defining moment. Soils over the, and most of this degradation is out of, actually climate change is also contributing what's called overuse of chemicals and fertilizers, in fact, at alarming rates. In the fertility of soils and the yields that farmers have been getting in normal circumstances. Challenges that combine hunger and debt and fragile livelihoods, because these farmers, being poor, they have limited assets, and therefore whenever any disaster strikes, their ability to cope to these shocks is very limited, and that will put them in a very dire situation. And therefore our aim as Ripple Effect is to look at these compounded challenges and find befitting strategies to address them through resilient farming, stable incomes, and also building stronger communities that are very inclusive. Next slide. So we have been in operation for some time now as Ripple Effect, and as a result, we can say that we are really happy to celebrate the achievements we've had so far and looking forward to do more with these funds that we are setting up. Over 3 million people so far have improved food and nutrition security through our programs. We've also supported farms to restore their soils, to conserve soils, and also grow more diverse foods. And we do this through the various ways in which we are training them, the farmers. We also are building stronger families through very simple, financially inclusive models. For example, savings and loaning associations, where we bring together women groups and they're able to put money together in what we call table banking. And as a result, they can borrow and they can also get income to do other bits of work. We also empower women by increasing their ability to make decisions or to take part in building their home, not just leaving everything to the man, but also their empowerment in the sense that they can also participate in entrepreneurial activities, they can make more income, and they can contribute ably as they should. We also spread our knowledge through passing on the gift in many ways. Some of the gift is knowledge where we train farmers, and as a result, 3 more households benefit by just training one farmer directly. But we also support our farmers to share other things like inputs that would be beneficial to their neighbors. So sharing is really a critical way and value that we treasure at Ripple Effect. Next slide, Chloe. Our ambitions towards 2030, which is our strategy, is to enable 5 million people to uplift them from poverty. We want to transform rural households. Like I said, smallholder farmers are a key cog in ensuring food and nutrition security in Africa. And therefore, we want to ensure that at least 70% of families that we work with are food secure and they are eating diverse foods, their children are eating nutritious foods. That is our ambition. We also want to make sure that we are scaling the climate resilient agroecological techniques across different families that we support. Like, for example, the picture that I shared, this picture is from Kenya. Just one of the techniques that I thought of sharing is where we are supporting farmers to embrace sunken beds so they can retain more water, they can preserve the soil, and they can grow the diverse vegetables on that small piece of land. We also want to strengthen farmer enterprises so that they can earn more reliable income and also ensure women and people living with disabilities are also included in all the work that we are doing and trainings. It's a more inclusive participation. Next slide, Chloe. So I just thought of sharing, I think my time has run out, a really quick story. This is from Uganda of some of the innovations that we are able to undertake with our farmers. So this is something we are setting up called the mini hubs. And these mini hubs that we are setting up in Uganda, they are value addition centers for milk products. In this case, we are producing yogurt. The picture you can see there of happy children. These are young children in nursery school. Most of them are under 6 years of age, and they're able to access nutritious yogurts for their gut health and also for their own health. And the good news is these yogurts are produced by farmer entrepreneurs. So these are the kind of mini hubs that we want to set up everywhere and have many more schools and many more income come from this. Because we know that when you add value to milk, you not only get more nutritious yogurts, but it's also a preservation method because milk is very, very perishable. Thank you very much for listening. I would like to hand over to Meshach.
Thank you, Winnie. I'm Meshach, the Farm Systems Coordinator for Ripple Effect. So I'll share briefly about thematic fund number 1, which is farming for the future. So this farming for the future is anchored in our sustainable agriculture thematic area. And in our sustainable agriculture, we look at how to support farmers to practice or to implement agroecological farming practices. Winnie, my colleague, just talked about the challenges of climate change and how this is driving food insecurity and poverty, particularly in this region where we are working. I was just looking at some figures currently, and they were telling me that close to 23 million people in the countries where we work in are currently food insecure. And this is being driven by, number one, climate crisis. And then secondly, also, my colleague talked about land degradation, because these are communities or households that depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, their main source of income, their main source of food, their main source of resources that they need. But the land in which they are using has been degraded. Actually, 65% of the farming land in this region are highly degraded. And the key drivers, one of those are climate change, and then number two is unsustainable farming practices. So agroecological approach looks at how do we regenerate these soils to be able to produce sustainably. So basically, we are looking at climate resilient practices that reduce risk for smallholder farmers, for current generation, but also for the future generations. So in this thematic fund, we are looking at how do we bring in some of the innovations that are grounded in local knowledge, local conditions and context, and within the capability of the farmers in terms of resources to be able to produce sustainably, to utilize their land maximally, and be able to produce enough for now, but also for the future generations. In this particular fund, we are looking at this fund supporting us in a number of ways. That is additionally to what we're already doing. So one, we are looking at bringing in and testing a number of innovations, because we have a number of innovations that are coming up, which we think are in line with sustainable and regenerative agriculture. You know, innovations such as black soldier fly and also vermicomposting. So black soldier fly is a kind of magic kind of insect, just to highlight a little bit, a magic kind of insect that actually converts organic matter into organic fertilizer called frass. But at the same time, the larva stage of this insect also is very, very rich in proteins, and therefore it is a perfect feed for livestock such as poultry, such as fish, such as pigs, and so on. And it reproduces very, very, very fast. Actually, a mature insect, a mature fly, can lay up to 500 to 900 eggs, and the whole insect life cycle will take like 30 to 45 days. So you can imagine how much this can provide farmers in terms of access to livestock feed, but at the same time, also access to organic fertilizer. We're also looking at establishing agroecological training center in Kenya, where we will bring together a number of innovations which we are working with farmers in training farmers in various agroecological technologies. Now, currently, we have these technologies that are doing very well within the household who we are working with. But at the same time, we think that if we bring all these technologies into one center, then it will be a perfect center for people to come to learn from, to refer from, and also for various policymakers also to come and learn from. Because currently, as we are, these technologies are dispersed within households in various communities, and it becomes very hard for people to learn around technologies that are dispersed in various communities. So we want to put this like in one house, in one store, in one center, so that it's easier for people to come to learn. And we think that with the support of our peer farmer training model, this kind of center is going to help us even reach more farmers. But also we are looking at farmers, looking at how do they test, how do they monitor the performance of their farms in terms of various indicators and various parameters such as soil pH. So we'll be bringing in a number of technologies to help farmers to be able to monitor that. We'll also be looking at digitizing training materials, which we already have. So we have training materials, but we want to make them in such a format, digital format, that peer farmers can use them, farmers can share out, and also these materials can be used in the training centers. And then finally, we are looking at also sharing new learning across programs for successful ideas to be scaled up, because we have various technical teams in various countries, and we think that this Farming for the Future Fund can really help us in, bringing it together and also doing cross-learning amongst country technical officers and country technical teams in sustainable agriculture. So that is what we are looking at, Farming for the Future, to be able to support us within this particular fund. So I will stop there and then hand over to my colleague, Sofanit.
Thank you, Meshak. Hello, everyone. So just to introduce myself again, I'm Sofanit Mesfin. I'm leading the gender and social inclusion work within Ripple Effect. So within this department, what we are doing is we want to make sure that everyone within the community benefits from our work equally. But unfortunately, as you all know, in this world, everyone doesn't have equal access to everything. So the major work that we are doing is trying to bring that equal access and benefit across everything that we do. So currently, we are working on women's leadership and decision-making and economic empowerment. So when it comes to integrating women in our work, most organizations just focus on number of women that they are working with, but we do believe that's just a base. Having a number of women working with you is just a beginning, but making sure that they're participating in our work, they're empowered to make to make decisions both at household and at community level is something that we do. We also work in inclusive approach for marginalized and excluded groups. So for example, when we work with persons with disabilities, we make sure that every training, every material that we are giving is accessible for everyone, because depending on the type of disabilities you are facing, some of the methodologies that different organizations works with, and including ours, might not be inclusive. So we make sure that we have inclusive approach. We are also working to create a safe environment. So we do have an approach that we call community-led safeguarding approach. We are working with vulnerable part of a community. So we need to make sure that the community is safe, and we need to make sure that the safeguarding issues are addressed, and we are empowering the communities to address their own safeguarding issues. We also address gender-based violence. But
actually, I noticed that the cameras have an interference, so I might turn off my camera just so I don't get into that again. Thank you, Emma. And my name is Egeru Deogratias, and I head and lead our work on enterprise development thematic area. And what I'm just going to do in the next 5 minutes is to try to talk us through what the enterprise development area covers. And this area, you would have heard about our 2030 strategy and our ambition to move 5 million people out of poverty by 2030. And enterprise is actually a strategic approach that we use to ensure that we are moving individuals as well as whole communities out of poverty through the creation and growth of sustainable businesses. And now we do this through support to farmers to transition from subsistence into running small but profitable enterprises on their farms, but also off the farm. And we also support to diversify incomes, so families don't depend on just a single income stream. And then we go further to do market access for them in enterprise development, but also doing value addition. Winnie, my colleague, shared with you a story of a youth group that is making yogurt, adding value to milk and producing a product that is higher value and enabling them to earn more income. So instead of selling raw products, they add value, increase their earnings through processing, preserving, but also improving the product. And lastly, we look at the business skills. So ensuring that we are passing on business skills, but also access to finance, and ensuring that the groups are ready for finance and also offering cooperative models. So I will just talk us through what the Seed and Scale Fund will support. So one of the things we hope to do with the Seed and Scale is to test new financial tools for farmers. And this includes crop and weather insurance. So we will hope to pilot financial tools that help farmers manage risk, especially climate-related risk. I think we've heard from the previous speakers how this affects production. So looking at things like partnerships with insurers to offer low premium weather indexed insurance for drought-prone areas, but also testing products like savings plus credit bundle for young agripreneurs, where they can save and then have a financial institution match, their savings, and they can invest and grow the enterprises they are growing, they are involved in. But also piloting training hubs and enterprise support centers for rural businesses. Again, this is something that Winnie has already talked about. Where we want to have hubs that can do a one-stop, which is like a one-stop center where farmers or youth can access skills, but also mentorship. They can also get information, share technologies in adding value and processing their products. So for example, the hubs will offer training. They may also do workshops on bookkeeping, maybe things like branding and digital marketing of products. And they will also be doing, offering learning, where they learn actually the processes. Like for that particular group, they will be learning how to process yogurt, so processing techniques, and also share technologies in these hubs. The other thing is to ensure that this fund will actually support youth-led enterprise and innovation challenges. We know that young people are key drivers of innovation, but they often lack capital and support to actually innovate. So the fund will go into helping them to test new business ideas and grow viable enterprises. Again, I give an example. For instance, organize youth innovation competitions for agro-processing solutions. This is just one of the things we could do with this fund. The other is helping cooperatives to invest in processing and storage and value addition. A lot of times we work with the farmer groups and cooperatives, but then they lack the required capital to invest into processing and storage. So this will, the fund will actually help catalyze that. And then it will also go into developing new partnerships with banks and financial service providers. Access to finance is a major barrier for rural farmers. So the fund will actively build partnerships that reduce risk for lenders and provide tailored products to smallholder farmers. That will be it for now. I would love to pass on to Sofanit if she's back.
Thank you, Dio. I am back. So I was talking about gender-based violence. So currently we're addressing gender-based violence, but our approach combines of the empowering women both economically and socially, and we believe that this is something that we do uniquely comparing to other organizations, because we do have the social empowerment tools, all the work that we are doing on their minds and addressing the social and cultural norms and why it's considered to hit a woman, for example. So this is all mindset, but that has to be combined with the economic empowerment, because sometimes even if the women and whoever is being is being the victim of this violence might stay in the violence because of poverty. So the combination of these two approaches is an effective way of addressing gender-based violence, and that's currently what we are doing. We also do conduct research and share best practices. So I just want to talk more now about what this fund will help us to do in the future. So next slide. So with this Equal Root Fund, we can make sure that training is more accessible for people with disabilities and marginalized group. Like I said, most of the work that we are doing, we want to make it more accessible to different people with different disabilities, which will help us to address more people. We want to establish childcare centers. We have seen that establishing childcare center is very, very effective to address the workload on women, but we have also learned from different visits that the children in the rural area, because of lack of childcare centers, they have been exposed to different sexual violence because they are not protected, and the women are forced to leave their children in unprotected places because they don't have the childcare center access. So we want to build that one. We want to produce labor-saving technology. So one of the ways we can reduce workload on women and also persons with disability is to introduce labor-saving technologies, because people who have different disabilities and also women, they need to be provided with this kind of technology so that they can use their time more efficiently, and it will also reduce the workload. We want to build capacity of community-based institutions to be inclusive and to ensure gender equality in their governance. So we are now working on communities and our target participants to address gender equality, but gender equality is something that needed to be addressed by all society. So we want to build community-based institutions. So we have the capacity, so we can, but if you have more money and if we have funds, then we can build community-based institutions and ensure inclusive governance. We want to develop a gender-responsive livelihood curriculum. So we want to combine our all training modules and all the documents that we have so far, and we want to develop curriculum so that we can be sharing our knowledge to stakeholders and other similar organizations, including community-based institutions. And we want to design and implement research initiatives because we need to address this barrier also at structural level. It's not only enough to address these issues at household level, because some of the issues need to be addressed at policy level, some of the issues need to be addressed in a higher structural level, and we want to contribute to that. And in order to contribute to that, we need evidence and research, and this fund will help us to do that. Thank you very much.
In a couple of minutes, we're going to be opening up the room for questions. But before we do that, I just wanted to quickly speak for a couple of minutes about how you could get involved in supporting one of these funds if you'd like to. So these funds are absolutely open to anybody who would like to support them at any level. We've recently developed a dedicated web page for each fund, and we'll be posting the links in the chat shortly, and they will also be in the follow-up email that you'll get after this webinar. So if you'd like to read a bit more information about each of the funds, you can click on those links, and there is also a donate page on each of the pages should you wish to make a donation. We do have some representatives of our corporate partners and also some people who were formerly members of our Kabele Giving Circle on this call. So I also wanted to let you know that we are developing a giving circle for each of the funds, and that's for supporters who are giving at the £5,000 level or above. And so the benefits of being a member of one of those giving circles will include the opportunity to join a WhatsApp group where Meshach, Deo and Sofanit will be sharing updates from their work. So if they hear an interesting story from a farmer or they're attending a conference that they think the Giving Circle will be interested in, they'll be sharing more kind of regular live updates with the members of the Giving Circle. And we'll also have some exclusive events for that group. There'll be opportunities to meet our programs team when they're in the UK. And also some of our senior team, including Paul, our CEO, and also Joseph, our new Director of Fundraising based in Nairobi, who has just started working with us this week. And also there will be an opportunity for members of the Giving Circle to get a longer written report on the impact that their support has enabled in each of the funds if they'd like it. So if you are interested in getting involved in one of those Giving Circles, then please do reach out to your Ripple Effect contact. And you can do that just by replying to the email that you'll get after that webinar and letting us know you'd like to know more. Right, I think it's time to hand over to you if anybody would like to ask a question. Hi, Andy.
Hi,
Andy,
Emma.
go
Hi,
ahead.
everybody. Hi. Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me on to this. Fascinating, really interesting. I think the one thing that really hits me is, the scope of what you're doing is very potentially impactful. But my question is, how do you measure the impact? Now, I know that you've talked about these sort of feedback mechanisms and everything, but I'm wondering how we can demonstrate success for the funders and thereby demonstrate success that can be leveraged with other funders. So it's all about demonstrating success as we go.
I think that sounds like a question for you, Winnie. Would you be happy to come in on that?
Yes, gladly. Thanks, Andy. So we have various ways that we are tracking and measuring our impact. First and foremost, each of the countries we have officers whose role is monitoring and evaluation. And then we also have at a higher programmatic level a department dedicated for monitoring. And they have set up various systems for doing this, where we collect a lot of qualitative data as well as quantitative to inform our dashboards. So every quarter, every year, we are able to tell where are we towards the 5 million that I talked about. So we're really able to really get that path. But then we also do have a very active storytelling board where we have active stories always being shared by countries, stories of change, but also sometimes there are stories to enable us, get better at programming. And then internally, we have what we call community of practice sessions. This is where we bring together technical teams to talk about things that are happening at program level and share experiences, and sometimes not so good experiences also to make sure we are getting it right. So these are like the various ways how we track and report on our impact.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy, for the question, and Winnie for your response. I can see we have a question in the chat from Ali and Mickey. So they say, just a question on the training centres. How are we learning the lessons from previous iterations of this approach, such as sustainability issues, high running costs and capital requirements? I expect you've already thought about it, but it would be good to hear your thinking. I think this probably relates to the hub. Ali and Mickey, do feel free to jump in if your question was in relation to something else. But I'm wondering if this might be a question for Meshach on the agroecological hub that you mentioned.
Yes. Sustainability of this center is one thing that we have thought around because we don't want it to be like dependent on the external support, but we want it to be an income generating activity at the same time also creating impact through knowledge dissemination and training, capacity building of additional communities. So what we are looking at is in the initial startup, we may require some support. Actually, we require some support to put up the initial setup. But with the technologies that we are going to roll out, for example, we have communities now who need organic fertilizer or organic manure. And I did mention an innovation such as use of black soldier fly. So if we put up a setup for black soldier fly in the center, apart from using it for training, it can also be used to generate organic fertilizer that can actually be sold to farmers. So that is one line. Secondly, the same feed that I talked about that is coming from that innovation we have so many farmers who are in need of feed. Actually, one of the challenges in livestock keeping for farmers is adequate and high quality feed. And therefore, farmers need feed. So there's demand for such a kind of product. So that is the line in which we are thinking that as much as we are using this center to disseminate and do training and increase our outreach, but we also put in mechanisms to ensure that this center is self-generating, income generating, so that at some point, this center will be self-sustaining and not depending on external support. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Meshach. Yes, and I hope that answers your question, Ali and Mickey. We have a question from Caroline in the chat around being able to advise clients specifically how their investment has helped ripple effect. And Caroline, you've said previously you've bought items from our gift catalogue, including letting people know how many families have been trained in rainwater harvesting and donating sheep. Yes, we absolutely do still have our gift catalogue, and it is still popular with both kind of individual supporters, but also with some of our corporate partners who like to, I guess, kind of itemize and quantify the support that they're giving in that way. And I know that our team did a piece of work last year on looking at what the products are that are available on there, and did a bit of a refresh. So absolutely, that is still something that we do. And I'm sure we can follow up with you directly if you'd be interested in a particular area. You've mentioned agriculture and enterprise there. Thank you for the question. I can't see any other hands or questions. Did anybody, oh, hang on, I can. A question from Nigel in the chat. How has climate change already impacted the African farmer's ability to deliver a safe harvest? And how do you see it changing in the near future? Yes, this is a very pressing question. I think I'll ask Meshach if you could come in on that one first.
Yeah. Just to respond to that, I think there are many examples on how climate change has impacted on farmers. And one of those ways is, for example, extended periods of drought that then makes farms to be moisture deficient. So farmers are not able to produce because of the extended drought periods. The other way that farmers get impacted is the degradation that I mentioned a little bit, because when farms and land lack water for quite some time, the level of regeneration also reduces. And when that reduces, the soil cover reduces, there is a lot of evaporation. So the lands get dry, they lack organic matter. And when it rains heavily, then you experience a lot of soil erosion. Topsoil is carried away that is supposed to be supporting crops. But we have also had cases where we have had floods and landslides that have caused disasters, washing away farms and livestock, and even causing disasters, breaking up infrastructure, and breaking the access to markets because the roads and the bridges have been washed away. So this is really difficult. Like in the region in which I am now, the East Africa region, this year the long rains have already started. It has never happened before. Normally the rains will begin at around mid-March. And so this would have been the time when farmers have prepared their lands. But the long rains came in mid-February. So it caught farmers unawares. They had not even prepared their land. And therefore they are rushing very fast to prepare their land, and so on. So they will delay because now the rains will have gone for quite some time. So these are various ways that climate change is impacting. And this is what we are doing through training them in adopting the agroecological practices, like the garden that my friend Winnie just talked about, where farmers are planted in some kind of holes. So those holes are meant, one, to trap water. Instead of water running down, those holes will trap water, number one. And then in those holes, the farmers will put organic matter and compost. And therefore, the organic matter and the compost will hold the moisture when it rains for quite some time. So there's availability of moisture. So these are various techniques. Practices such as crop and livestock integration are very important. We have seen this work very well because then livestock will support the farm and the farm will also support livestock through feeds and the manure going, the fertilizing and so on. So these are some of the lessons that we have learned. And that is why we think that expanding, upscaling, scaling these kind of practices through various means, one of them being an innovation agroecological center, will help many farmers become climate resilient. Thanks.
Thank you, Meshach. And I'm just thinking about the second part of Nigel's question there, which was how do you see it changing in the near future? Based on what you've said about the rains coming earlier this year, I'd imagine you're seeing a trend in one direction. But did you want to respond on that part of the question as well?
Yeah, sure. So looking at going forward and how we see it, I think climate change is here and it is with us. And there's all evidence that climate will not stabilize. It will keep changing. How to predict that we don't know, because, for example, like what I said, the expectation will have been the rains will delay, because that has been the common trend, that instead of rains, long rains coming back in mid-March, sometimes the rains will delay up to around April, and maybe farmers will have planted around March expecting that the rains are coming. But just to say that we see this being a continuous kind of challenge, but the direction in which it takes is also quite challenging. It is very difficult to predict, and I think that is why we need to strengthen adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you, Meshach. And Nigel says, thank you for your answer and the good work you're doing to help them mitigate it. All quite challenging. Thank you, Nigel. And we have an interesting question from Ruth, which I think I might ask Deo to come in on because of your innovation remit. So Ruth has asked, is modern weather forecasting playing a part? Is it accessible for rural farmers?
Modern weather forecasting would actually play a part, but this is something that we don't have the luxury of in most of the region where we are working in. And even where it does exist, the information being relayed to the farmers is quite a challenge. So that is quite of a challenge. I think the other question which has not been asked was, which maybe Emma you were thinking of, is how we can do financial products actually to help farmers cope with this, and that is the weather indexed insurance for farmers. So when that risk happens, actually they are covered for the loss that they have faced, and there's some bit of compensation coming to them. But Meshach, you can put in some.
Thank you, Deo. Yes, I think what I've seen also is that the countries are trying. We have different scenarios in several countries. We have countries which this is a real challenge, in that the weather forecasting is really at a national level. And farmers are localized. So when farmers receive very generalized information, sometimes it does not help. So we have predictions, the government through relevant ministries. For example, in Kenya, we have the Kenya Meteorological Department. They will share this information, but then it will be on a top scale. So it becomes very difficult for farmers to act. But in Kenya also, I have seen this being done at local levels, at the county. Counties are like local governments. I actually I have subscribed to getting those alerts. But these are documents. These are documents that cannot be utilized by ordinary farmers, because they are documents that talk about expect rain here, expect rain there, and so on. What I can also recognize that, yes, in Kenya, that has really improved, but at the national level, but not at the local level. At local level, at the local governments, what we are getting, including myself, it is, yes, it's at the local level, but it is very difficult for farmers to utilize that kind of information. Yeah. So perhaps we need a new way, an innovation that is much more practical to the local farmers we are working with. Thanks.
Mm. Thank you, Meshach and Deo, for those responses. And Sofanit's also put a comment in the chat saying she thinks that these funds will help us think about how we can make that information more accessible to rural farmers. And I think those questions have really brought out that dual challenge of increasingly unpredictable weather, but also a lack of information in some cases available to farmers. So yes, thank you all for your answers and your questions. We are nearly at time, so I think we will close the webinar there. Thank you all so much for making the time to join us. We really appreciate all of your support of Ripple Effect, your time this afternoon, and we'd love to hear your comments or feedback either on this webinar or on the funds, and more generally, you know, we always love to know about your experience of supporting Ripple Effect. So please do get in touch with us. We'll be sharing an email after this webinar with those links that we mentioned. But yes, thank you again for joining, and we hope to be in touch with you soon. Have a good afternoon.